Greetings to one and all present here, and thank you for joining us today on the 12th International Conference for Teachers of English Language Teaching during COVID-19. It is my pleasure to welcome you all into this session. Today, I am honored to introduce Mr. Diego Díaz. Mr. Díaz holds an English bachelor's degree from Upnfm and an applied linguistic graduate degree from Salient, Illinois University. He has worked as an instructor for all levels of ESL and EFL for over 9 years. At the moment, he is coordinating the English program at UPNFM, Centro Universitario Regional at Santa Rosa de Copan. He is an active researcher on the methods of successful teaching of ESL, grammar, and applied linguistics for language instruction. Thank you, and please enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. It is such a great pleasure to be once again part of this valuable exchange that we all know as the Conference for Teachers of English, hosted by our UPNFM English program. We are running on the 12th edition, and every time it gets better. I can consider myself a regular now because this is my 6th time presenting. So for today, I have prepared a session that is derived from my experience as a facilitator of the course mentioned in the title, Phonetics and Phonology. And there is also the component of collaborative work. And I decided to incorporate this element of collaborative work because it is one of the 21st century skills that I have been eagerly promoting in my online courses, and because it is proven to be of greater benefits for teachers, for learners in general, and because it also enables them to achieve and define a common educational purpose. So let's take it away. And I would like to start by giving an overview of the session. I will start off with some background information on the Phonetics and Phonology course in which the study was developed. Then I'll move on to the textbook review, looking at the bibliography that has been used for the course over the past, and also looking at the textbook I am currently using, which mostly focuses on the English IPA, as you can see it in the slide. It also focuses on connected speech processes, and lastly, it goes over the teaching of pronunciation. Lastly, I will finish up describing the experience of teaching this course in Campus Santa Rosa de Copan while doing distance learning and promoting at the same collaborative work with all the learners. So this is the overview. I expect you to gain a lot of insights from this presentation. This is a session that is mostly based on this, my experience adapting the content, adapting this course that for the longest time it was always thought as an in-person course, but because of the pandemic and all the conditions that we already know about, it had to be adapted into online learning. Okay, perfect. So for starters, it is important to look at the bigger picture here. And I will start off with just giving some giving a description of the UPNFM Undergraduate English program. I understand that majority of the ones here in this session are students, and if not, or you're already teachers of English, and probably you graduated from a university, so you're very much familiarized with this. But for those who are not, let me just give you a brief description of our program. The English program, the undergraduate English program, contemplates 48 courses. So the majority of them have a clear orientation towards the teaching of the language, because that's what we do, So we are being trained, or you are being trained to become English teacher. There is also the component of the literature, a different focus on literature, and another one on linguistics. For the purpose of this study, Out of the 5 linguistic courses that there are in the program, as you can see it on the slide, we have Fundamentals of Applied Linguistics. We move on with Morphosyntax. We have Phonetics and Phonology. We have Social Linguistics and Psycholinguistics. And all of them are taught in the separate terms. I decided to go for Phonetics and Phonology. So the main reason for this choice, was that it has always been a challenge for me to teach this course in person. Basically because of its heavy content. As you can see, there are, as I provide a description there are 60 hours of class distributed along 13 weeks. The content starts in the course, it starts by looking at the vocal tract and articulators. We also cover the consonant and the vowel sound in the English language. There is also a focus on understanding the suprasegmental features and also the phonological processes involved in the production of English. And there is also an emphasis on the teaching of language. And it is highlighted in this slide because even though this is a linguistics-oriented course, I've always thought that even though we do pay attention to the previous information, all of the topics described previously, I do believe that the core of this course should take students to understand how the linguistic information given in relation to phonetics and phonology should enable them to understand how to properly teach the pronunciation of this English that we're learning. So with this study, I meant to see how it was possible to adapt the content to a virtual environment, but with the addition of the collaborative work element using online resources. And I'm pretty positive that we have all, as teachers, have had to do this. We have been pushed towards the necessity of adapting whatever course we teach to learning to virtual environments. All right, so now that I already gave you a description of the course this study was embedded in, I would like to move on with the textbook review. So for the textbook review, I wanted to give you a glimpse of the bibliography suggested in the course scope. Personally, I have used these texts in the past, in the multiple times I have taught this course. So as the first textbook, you can see there in the slide, I have used An Introduction to Phonetics and Phonology by John Clark. I've also used Introducing Phonetics and Phonology by Mike Davenport and Essay Analyst. The third textbook included in the scope is A Course in Phonetics by Meter Lechfeld. And the fourth textbook is English Phonetics and Phonology, a practical course by Peter Roach. So even though I have extensively used this literature in the past, I always felt they lacked the teaching of the pronunciation part, and which is the reason that I thought, since this was the first time teaching the course online, I wanted to go for a more integrated text. As teachers, we must always stay up to date with the latest and more effective resources to enhance our teaching. So after an extensive research for a more adequate text, I came across this one. It is, as you can see on top, the name of the textbook I'm currently using for the course is called Pronunciation and Phonetics, a Practical Guide for Language Teachers by Adam Brown. As you can see, these are the main components of the textbook. The first part deals with phonetics, looking at the vocal tract, looking at the IPA specifically for the English language, and there's also some attention paid to distinctive features. In the same section, there's also some focus given to connected speech processes. And these help students understand what are the processes involved in the regular and daily use of the language. Then on the second section of the textbook, there is a lot of attention paid to the teaching of pronunciation. So the first section deals with how to integrate the linguistic knowledge from the previous session, everything that has to do with the vocal tract, that has to do with the manner and place of articulation of consonants, understanding the articulators involved in the production of vowels, then what I already explained about the connected speech processes, assimilation, weakening, linking, all of those processes. So they are integrated into how to teach pronunciation effectively. Then there's also a focus on fossilization, how to help our teachers deal with this problem and how they can eventually, in their classrooms, use their future learners. There's also an attention to nonverbal communication. And at the end, there is a focus on listening, because I'm a firm believer that the better you listen, the better you will able to produce the language you're learning, right? And I think as instructors, we tend to neglect this skill. We tend to really put aside the development of the listening skill, and that should not be the case. If we want our students to enhance their pronunciation and to have a better comprehension of the processes involved in pronunciation, the pronunciation of the language, we should also help them out with their listening skill. So this textbook came to me, and I came across this textbook after an extensive research, basically because of this being the first time teaching the course online, and because I noticed that even though the textbooks I mentioned at the beginning have proven to be effective, I wanted to try something different. I wanted to really incorporate a different element in terms of the textbook that I would use for the course. So after this textbook review, after taking a look at the background of the course and going over the textbook I'm using at the moment, I want to narrow it down to the actual experience of teaching this class for the first time in a virtual environment. So there are three key aspects I will cover, as you can see in the slide. The first element is number one, remote learning virtual environment. Number two, I will look at how I incorporated the collaborative learning in the course. And the last point will address the performance of students in the course after the adaptations I did to it. So in my class, this third term, I have 16 students. And I think it's an ideal number for a linguistics course. It has allowed me to approach each of my students, which I think it's necessary, especially when doing online learning. It's necessary to really keep an eye on every single one of them, as we would do in in-person learning. But the fact that we are distanced from each other, we are not physically present, it demands a lot more attention. So this number of students has allowed me to keep a more continuous track of their progress through both formative and formative assessment and evaluation as well. So for the first aspect, I mean to briefly explain you the most salient curriculum adaptations I did considering the virtual environment. So the first adaptation that I thought of doing was to find a more approachable textbook. As I previously stated, there was some literature already in use, suggested in the scope, but however, I wanted to find a more suitable text for the conditions I was teaching the course. So that's what I did, and I think I also wanted to do that because it would give the students a better resource to keep track of their learning in the course. The second point that I want to state about remote learning and the adaptations I did was to clarify to the maximum extent the expectations and objectives of my teaching. I think it is important for our students, or for me as a teacher, to ensure that my students would not feel overwhelmed with the amount of content and information in the text and other resources. So I run a painstakingly selection of the topics I consider were most relevant for them as potential language teacher. Of course, I did this selection using my experience as an instructor and also as my experience as a former language learner. This was important. Selecting the adequate content is important, especially because you have to state clear and realistic goal for the learners. And I think oftentimes we tend to, when we are preparing our course and when we prepare the amount of content for our courses, we get carried away with the content that is given in the textbook. So considering the special conditions that online environment poses upon us, I think you have to be a lot more careful with the number of topics included. So I had to discard some topics and then integrate them into other sections. So I did pay attention to them, but maybe by looking at different aspects of it and incorporating or connecting them to previously taught topics. So that's basically what I did when I adapted the content. The third adaptation I also consider for the course has to do with the many lessons I have been left with after doing remote learning or for almost 1 year or a half or so. So that is identify the best online tools for interaction. In this sense, Google Classroom has been my greatest ally. It is such a convenient site for teachers and students to stay connected. Definitely Zoom. Most of my synchronous sessions were done through Zoom. And most importantly, the feature of breakout rooms have also been very, very valuable because I have been able to open up discussions. I've been able to empower students through letting them use their voices to address issues, to address topics that pertain to not only phonetics and phonology, but also pertain to the teaching of the pronunciation. So for the second aspect, which is collaborative learning, I want to start by saying that this element goes pretty much to the core of this presentation that I'm doing for you, and also the study I run through this course. So for the first 6 weeks of the course, most of the learning assignments were individual activities. The students would complete them on an individual basis, and that connects to the self-regulation concept that is so important when doing remote learning. The idea of self-regulation refers to the student's ability to manage their own learning processes in an online environment without an in-person teacher support. So first there was a lot of concentration on giving them the responsibility of their own learning, making students aware that the teacher was not there physically present to monitor their progress. However, from a distance, I will always be there, helping them out and making myself as approachable as possible for them to feel they were being assisted in their learning process. So after these 6 weeks, in which I did a lot of individual work, I spent the remaining weeks in the term devoting myself to more group-oriented assignments with the hopes of making the activities more engaging. I think that was the key goal, to make them more engaging and to have students come together to find out solutions for potential problems they would find in the classroom when teaching English. So I did that, after selecting the most adequate online resources, I decided to go for that, for a more collaborative approach. And this came, I think, this was definitely a huge improvement for the course, especially that now that we were doing it in an online setting. there was a lot of this sense of building community was very important, and the students were able to engage in this sense of a community of learners working together towards a common goal. Students, I think I would want to capitalize on the many resources that students were able to share and the information and the content they were able to share through the many resources that were given by myself as instructor, but also resources they found by themselves as well. So Google, I used a lot of debates, a lot of forums, a lot of design of activities that would have them engage in group projects. And for the last part, for the performance part, throughout the term, I think promoting self-regulation was one of the biggest challenges in the engagement. And engagement changed significantly when we started doing collaborative learning. I myself was able to see that those who would not regularly participate in individual-based activities were more open to participation. So that was, I would say, one of the biggest wins of adapting the course into an online setting, into an online environment. They were able to self-regulate and become more independent, more autonomous in their learning. And by using the textbook that was made available to them at the beginning of the course, they kept track of the topics that we were doing. And I was able to see an increase in the amount of participation in the online forums that I posted. I used Google Stream, that is a feature that is available in Google Classroom. And I also used the Moodle site of our university, the online platform. There's a feature that allows us to engage in forums, engage in online discussions. And as I already said, even though there were students that were reluctant to participate at the beginning, I was able to see an increase in their participation, even though there was not, probably they would not participate in during the live sessions. I was able to see that they did engage in discussion through the forum. So I would say that that's one of the greatest benefits of promoting collaborative learning, that those students who might feel shy about participating because of probably their English level or because they are not as open or social as other students, they find a place where their voices can be heard and their opinions can be heard, their ideas can be heard. And even though they do not do it live, the fact that we open up spaces as online forums, online chats, or even having them or allowing them to express their ideas through the chat box is always the benefit, and it's always a resource that works it comes in their help. All right. So conclusions. There are three main areas for my conclusions. And the first one is well-being. There's a second area for my conclusions, and that is professional development. And I also have a workplace expectations as the third area for my conclusions. So basically, my conclusions are narrowed down to this. By incorporating collaborative work to my online course, I targeted the students' well-being. So that is the first part. That's why I have the image for a heart. So I was able to target students' well-being, and I saw an increase in student retention. I saw an increase in their self-esteem and responsibility. And how was this possible? Well, because once students are satisfied with their accomplishments, they come to understand that their progress depends entirely on them. So they value more what they do and put some extra effort in completing what is required from them. And this was obvious, as I already said. Those students who perhaps felt not as confident when participating in the course at the beginning with individual activities, once they engage in collaborative work, the fact that they share with others, the fact that they share with their peers their ideas before presenting them openly in the live sessions, made them gave them a space for practice before actually presenting the assignment they were working on. And did this increase their self-esteem as learners? Some of them were reluctant to participate because they thought maybe their pronunciation was not the best in comparison to their peers. But I think these fears went away once this sense of community was developed. I think that we as human beings, we are social, right? We are endowed with this capacity to engage with others. And once we come together as a community, and this is what happens in a classroom, every time you start a course, the idea is that all of the learners and the teacher involved are part of a community that is promoting learning. So a community, in that community, you have people that help one another. And this is exactly what happens in this phonetics and phonology course. All the students come together as learners and they helped one another. They gave their best and they put their strengths in order to help others and in order to enhance each other's learning. In the second area, for my conclusions, I have focused on professional development. I am a firm believer that collaborative work leads to development of higher level thinking. It also promotes oral communication. There's an increase in self-management and leadership skills. And there's also the promotion of student-faculty interaction. Through collaborative work learning, as a teacher, you may also have your students consider the future work space expectations, because there's an exposure to an increase in understanding of diverse perspective, and there's also preparation for real life social and employment situations. So what happens? Remember that one of the 21st century schools is having professionals understand the value of working together towards the common goal. And that is something that we as instructors, as facilitators, should promote in our classrooms. The need for future professionals to understand that they are not by themselves, that once they are hired to work in a company, to work in an institution, there's a bigger group of people they will have to work with, and they will have to report their results. They will have to come together to find ideas and find solutions for problems existing in the company. So finding solutions to already existing problems is something that we do together. And the classroom should be a reflection of the real life. What happens in the classroom should help students understand the value of the life once they graduate, once they leave the classroom. They should leave the classroom with this idea that whatever course I was part of, it trained me to life out there. So I think that this course allowed for an attention, it paid a lot of attention to collaborative work, and there was learning of phonetics and phonology, of course, because it was the focus of the class. It was the focus of the course. There was also a deep learning on the pronunciation of teaching, understanding the most adequate techniques for teaching pronunciation, the most effective strategies for teaching pronunciation. But beyond that, I think the actual purpose of this course was to bring all of that together while promoting collaborative work. And it proved to be successful. To me, I think it's an experience I would love to replicate. And even though probably in the future, the virtual environment might not be the case anymore, it is the future, definitely. But once we go back to in-person learning, there are some adaptations that would have to be made, probably because we will follow a hybrid model. We will do some in-person sessions along with online sessions as well. But definitely, I would not forget to include collaborative work in my future learning spaces. All right, so I would like to just finish up with some references of the literature I used to prepare this presentation. I have some resources that I think you would find useful as well to understand better how to incorporate collaborative working in your online courses. And of course, you also have my contact information right there. You can contact me through my institutional email. As you can see it is Díaz@upnfm.edu.hn. So it will be great to hear from you. That's it for today. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope I didn't get you bored with this, but instead get you interested in my experience teaching this course in a virtual environment. You may experience or encounter similar scenarios in the future. So I do hope my experience helps you understand better the adaptations you can make to any given course and the attention that must be given to collaborative learning as a 21st century skill. Thank you once again, and over to you. Have a good one.